I turn 35 next month. I've been writing since I was about 19 professionally. I wrote in high school to get rid of teenage angst, and then I had a surgery, was laid up, and started in '08 and followed it away and started laying plans for my first novel. I was lucky in the fact that my mother had a friend in Tulsa that was the agent and the ghostwriter for people like Joyce Meyer, Joel Osteen, all that kind of stuff. He also handled fiction, so he tried to do me to some place like Zunder or some place that handled fantasy like that. But then it was the '08, '09 downturn, and they weren't taking chances on people no matter how good they may be if they hadn't sold 300,000 copies. So one of his friends at the publishing houses that was a buyer said, they were out to lunch one day, he said, Jeff, it could be that this could be the next religious Harry Potter, but we can't take it, and if he hasn't already sold 500,000 copies in this economy, we have to shell out at least $50,000 to print the first copy. That's the way it used to be. That's why I went to Amazon. Amazon's changed everything. Mm-hmm. And from them, my dad learned how to do my next two books. I'm still in contact with Jeff. He's retired, but we're just friends. And so I wrote 3 complete standalone novels, and then I was working on a 4th. And while I was working on a 4th, it wasn't writer's block. It's what they say George R. Martin's in. He just writes and writes and writes and gets nowhere. So yeah. So basically, I was thinking I like reading like a lot of these D&D, World of Warcraft books, and in one or two of them, there are these people that walk between universes and write down everything. Kind of like if you used to watch Highlander, observe and record, but never interfere. And that's this guy right here. Can you help me pick it up? My best friend's sister did this illustration for me. This is Lama throughout the Angel Monk, and that's my MO for my writing day. So it's not my pen name, but he writes all the stuff that all the fantasy stuff. He can go in between universes, and I gotta admit I don't like as much Marvel, but now that Marvel and DC have done what they did, people used to just do that in books and comic books, and now that it's done on TV series and on. I don't have to explain what a multiverse is. The first 1 or 2 years I had this book, I had to explain it, but then it just only took like 30 seconds, like Marvel does, and because people have been doing that in books for like 100 years now, but they haven't been doing it in movies and TV to that extent. So I just put them to something like that, and they know what I'm talking about. And it used to be, I don't sell much in print these days, because like they say, 95% of all Amazon is digital. So, but the last I checked, the top that you could do was 820 pages, and I've written so much in addendums to this thing that it's gone to like 11 point font now. So you can find this book online for only $10. That's actually only, if you scan the ISBN on the back, if you do the digital, it's $10. I get 7, and you get all 5 of the books. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So if you want to scan it or something, you can, or scan and then go to digital on it. So it's the best. It's the best selling point I have. I sell my other books too, that are part of this book, but that are part of this omnibus. But I make the most, like $7.26 if you spend $10 on this book. And that's like $2 per book, and I can still get $7. So.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, to get more philosophical, I wrote to entertain myself, to have the adventures that I couldn't because of my disability. My mother was always encouraging my imagination. It was like, when they finally found out when I was a year old, they'd see, feel like, well, play in your imagination, honey. And also, I've dealt with it, like the same 98% of disability with depression, so like that. This really helps. I write out what I'm thinking. I started out, honestly, I was at 15 writing down these poems, and I write like 5 or 10 of them a day, so. And the more I got older and the more I got deeper, like fighting depression, the more serious I got, but also it got beautiful as well. So I really think one of my greatest literary achievements I got to chat online with R.I. Salvatore, who is Dungeons and Dragons' biggest author, and I was like, look at you. I'd like to try to ask questions about God, and my faith. So, questions I can ask that I can't ask physically of someone asking these books. So yeah, and also it helped. I would say that yes, making a little bit of my own money is nice, but also like you guys, I get to meet people. That's where the real royalty is. You get royalties off art. That's where the real royalty. I've sold several thousand of these copies individually, but we stopped keeping track of it a while ago. But it was several thousand, and it's more like coming to do this. Like in a library, it's like I wanted to do this ever since I created this IP, which was about 11 years ago, and so this is a little bit of a fulfillment of a dream for me. But it's like it is. Like when I came into the ministry that I'm at Devon at, I was somebody because I started giving away books and then that. So it's not the notoriety itself, but I made tons of friends, struck up tons of conversations just because of this, and. And actually, my dad used to say when I had the smaller individual novels in my backpack, like I was like a drug dealer, like hey, like, even in places that you shouldn't, like the post office or something like that. So. My dad said I was kind of like a drug dealer for books, And also, I learned a lot about sales. It's not about just the cold hardness. It's about making the relationship, and the relationship with people became more. My mother sometimes like these are worth $10. Well, if you just let them pay what they want to pay me, it'll give you. And some people would once or twice give me $50 or something like that. So that's a good thing too. My mother was right. The more docile ways of doing stuff does sometimes pay off. So yeah, and my mother's my hero. When I started tinkering around with writing, it was right when The Lord of the Rings was coming out, and she had normally only 14-year-old girls and younger get this. She had osteosarcoma at 44, and a week after we saw Lord of the Rings, she broke her leg, and almost died 3 times in the hospital in 2002. But that's when those were coming out. And I've done more research into Tolkien's Christianity after that, but it's when Gandalf says we can't choose what happens to us, we can choose what to do with something that's good to us. And my mom it was a week before she broke her leg, and the oncologist said, we'll start you on chemo soon, just don't break this leg. And I was alone in the house with a robot call, and so we had just heard Gandalf say that a week before. And so that Lord of the Rings took me through, along with my church, along with the prayers, took me through all of that, and because it was big news back then, and by the time the Return of the King came out, my mom was fully cancer-free, and we went to go see the end of the movie, so it was, I grew up, you could say that as a teenager, I grew up spiritually and Christianly through Lord of the Rings, and then coming out, and that being some sense in this world, like my mom, who was one of the most healthiest people I ever knew, and a gymnast in high school, loses her right leg. But it's funny, when we would run vacation ball schools at our church, and it would be the sports kid, like, I can't do this anymore, but I'll show you kids how I can still bend my leg back behind my head if you're very good. And, she does that, and it's amazing. And Nick's met her, Devin's met her once, and Nick's met her so, and she's my hero. She even after her cancer, she was a children's pastor for like 12 years. And so my friends, like Nick, are like, how do you know this? Like a children's pastor's kid for 12 years, so yeah. That little church like really championed my mother, and she championed me, so here I am. So yeah, basically that's it. I don't do as much unless it's like a poem here or there. And like I said, that thing is packed beyond the word count of what I can get it to. So I just do this on the sly, I'm not as big of a salesman as I used to be, but it likes to make, and I've enticed people to read before, like even at my church, they're adults now, but this guy that was like 14 years old, he wouldn't read anything, and he read my book. So it's like Dungeons and Dragons, Lord of the Rings, anything like that, even like Harry Potter, magic school and stuff. So my website is, and be careful because it's a good thing that my aunt messed up for my mom when she was filling out the form, she messed up my name. Because if you do Marshall with 2 L's, Marshall Myers, you'll end up buying real estate in New York to this day. So Marshall, one L, M-Y-E-R-S. So I didn't have to buy the domain for $5,000 from him because my aunt had messed up my papers. because my mom was too drugged up to, you know. Because of that, like, I've always heard it spelled one, like, let's spell it with one, so because of that, I didn't have to pay $5,000 to them.
There you go.
Yeah, so it's Marshall with one out myrs.com, and it has a hyperlink to my Amazon store as well. Under the I purchase section, and that's where the only where we sell, because Barnes and Noble isn't around as much anymore. Borders, we deleted those links because it's just all Amazon these days. And I'm on Kindle. Kindle for the regular is usually $2.99 or $12.99 for the physical book, and you get the Kindle file as well. These days, it's a 2-for-1 deal. Didn't used to be, but about 5 years ago. Yeah, so books are only $2.99. I got 2 books of those, and I get like about 3 if you got the $12.99 one. Yeah. So
that's a huge accomplishment.
Either way, yeah. And when Jeff had that idea, he's like, I'm not gonna do this. I'm gonna have to pay. But it really did work out. He had a model the first few years that was much cheaper than anyone else. And I mean, if you they're in black and white, but if you look here, all the first 3 ones are the ones that his graphic artist did. And the young lady on my that I wrote for my niece, after my niece, in my Narnia romance novel, that is his secretary. Because I'll always be calling Tulsa, I saw her picture of it. Hey, would you like to do this for me? And she did. She was about my age at the time, and she was the cover model. Yeah, so like I said, with Mary Ellen, I just made friends, and that's the biggest royalty ever. So, thank you for having me. Like I said, and it's just, my email is just Marshal Myers. If you want to send questions or ask how to do stuff, I'd be more than happy to answer it.
Where did you say was the place to buy it where you got
Amazon. I'm all just only on Amazon.
Okay.
Look up me under author as well, or you go to MarshallMyers.com with one out, and there's a purchase button, and then you go down to the Amazon link. So,
Awesome. Thank you.
yeah. I also have an Amazon store as well.
Check that out.
Just look me under author. Just make sure it's with one out and MYERS. MYERS.
No real estate.
No. If you do it too, the guy's still working. It's up in New Jersey. Yeah. I would have had to pay $5,000 for that domain.
Oh gosh.
Good, you didn't have to.
Yeah, because my aunt and my mom spelled my name wrong.
That's a good story.
Yeah, it is. Well, look, ever since I created this IP, I've wanted to do this. So thank you for having me. It's a great 10 years in the making. So thank you, and thank you, Devin.
No problem. Anytime. Anytime.
Yeah.
I wonder if you'd ever be able to maybe do a longer talk about your
I
writing process.
wanted to. I mean, I've done this at summer camp before when I did it at summer camp, but this is the only time that I've done it in a library. So thank you to Devin for doing that.
You are very welcome.
You really came through, and I owe you one.
That's what I'm
I'll
here.
take a Marshall Myers writer's workshop.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah. I don't know about that. But yeah.
That's awesome.
All right.
So nice to meet you.
Yeah. And now the only problem will be pulling that file off of my phone tonight. Yeah. So it was a pleasure meeting y'all, and
Thank you.
and also this is the earlier version of that book. It's just that book has more material in it. So.